On November 23, 2021, the lead guitarist and main songwriter for the popular indie band Rakuda walked into the Charles Cross police station in Plymouth and told officers that he had some valuable information to share. He told police that he was there to confess to a murder, before asking them for a map of the area, and proceeded to direct detectives to an isolated area near the beach at Bobbi, where police would later find the body of 18-year-old Bobbi Anne Mcleod. At that point, she'd been missing for 3 days already, after she'd been abducted from a nearby bus stop. And when police eventually recovered the body, they were shocked by the sheer horror of her injuries. She'd been bludgeoned with a claw hammer with a total of 12 blows to her head and face, and after somehow still surviving the attack, her attacker proceeded to stomp on her head and neck until she died. And the reason for this horrific attack? Well, there wasn't any. This is the horrifying case of Bobbi Anne McLeod. Bobbi Anne McLeod was born on July 19, 2003, and lived in Plymouth, a port city in Devon located in the southwest of England. She was described as a happy girl who had a big circle of friends and someone who could get along with anyone. She had a passion for drawing and exploring her creative side, and had a deep love for music, and even jokingly stated that she would marry a man based on his musical taste. In November 2021, Bobbi was 18 years old and had her whole life ahead of her. She had a tight-knit group of friends who loved her dearly, an extremely close relationship with her parents and brother, and even had a boyfriend who she loved spending time with. In fact, on that fateful day of November 20th, 2021, Bobbi had plans to visit her boyfriend that evening. The day started out like any other for Bobbi Anne McLeod. She had breakfast, hung around the house with her family, scrolled through her phone like teenagers normally do, and had an all-around easy Saturday afternoon. At about 5:45 that afternoon, she told her family that she was heading out to visit her boyfriend, so she said her goodbyes and headed to the nearby bus stop on Banton Road, a trip she had made many times before. Bobbi got to the bus stop around 6 p.m., where passerbys would later confirm to have seen her waiting for the bus somewhere between 6 and 6:30. At around 10 to 7, Bobbi would post her last message on social media, a Snapchat picture of her feet at the bus stop saying she was cold. This would be the last time anyone had heard from Bobbi. At 9 p.m. that evening, her parents got the call that would no doubt have made their hearts drop. On the other end of the line was Bobbi's boyfriend, who wanted to know if Bobbi was still coming to visit him, because her phone was off and she wasn't at his house yet. Her parents immediately knew that something was terribly wrong and wasted no time trying to take action. They immediately called around to friends and acquaintances, desperately hoping that someone had seen or heard from Bobbi. But when it was confirmed that no one knew where she was, they turned to social media requesting the community to help. Unfortunately, her family wasn't able to find her that evening, so they reported her missing but still continued their search. By the time morning came around, news of Bobbi's disappearance had spread across Plymouth, and the community came out in dozens to help search for Bobbi. On Sunday morning, November 21st, the day after Bobbi went missing, a schoolboy who was part of the search party found Bobbi's AirPods on a footpath behind the bus stop Bobbi was waiting at the previous evening. Another gentleman also came forward stating that he arrived at the bus stop at 7:15 the previous evening and said that when he arrived there was nobody else there. He said that he had sat down waiting for the bus, and while kicking his feet back and forth he accidentally kicked a phone laying on the ground. He immediately picked it up and looked around to see if he saw anyone who could have possibly dropped their mobile phone, but he quickly realized that there was nobody else around and that he was alone. He said that the bus arrived at 7:23, so he got in and handed the phone to the driver, hoping that whoever lost their phone would come back to get it. The phone would later be confirmed to be that belonging to Bobbi Anne. The discovery of Bobbi's phone, along with her AirPods in the footpath behind the bus stop, clearly pointed towards foul play, and police were beginning to suspect that Bobbi was abducted from the bus stop. They immediately ramped up their search, putting up posters, interviewing members of the public, and requesting that anyone come forward with information on Bobbi's disappearance. The information provided by witnesses was helpful in providing a timeline of events, and police were able to determine that Bobbi went missing between 6:50 p.m., the time she posted her last message on social media, and 7:15 p.m., the time the man who found her phone arrived at the bus stop. But with no other witnesses or leads in the case, police had hit a brick wall and knew that they needed something extraordinary to move the case forward. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, they got a sudden and unexpected break in the case. On November 23, 2021, 3 days after Bobbi Anne went missing, 24-year-old Cody Ackland walked into the Charles Cross police station and told them he was there to confess to the murder of Bobbi Anne McLeod. Cody wasn't someone who was on the police's radar and didn't really fit the profile of a killer. He had never been in trouble with the law and lived a pretty productive life. He worked as a car valet and was also part of a 4-piece indie band called Rakuda, who released their first album in 2020 and was very popular in the Plymouth area. Ackland was actually their lead guitarist and main songwriter at the time. The confession obviously came as a shock to the police, but they immediately took him back to the interrogation room wanting to know what he had to say. After sitting down with police, Ackland asked them to provide him with a map of Plymouth and then pointed out to an area in Bovisand. Police immediately dispatched units to the area, and after less than 2 hours of searching, they found the body of Bobbi Anne McLeod. Police then arrested Cody Ackland and charged him with the murder of Bobbi Anne McLeod, and they quickly realized that he was quite open to speaking to them. Ackland confessed to abducting and murdering Bobbi Anne on the night of November 20th, 2021. He told police that he didn't know Bobbi and that it was simply a crime of opportunity. He said that on that fateful night, he was feeling quite low and needed to get out of the house a bit. He said that he passed the bus stop where Bobbi was waiting, and she immediately caught his eye as she reminded him of a girl he used to date. He said that he suddenly had the urge to harm her, so he stopped his car not too far from the bus stop and walked toward Bobbi. He said that he silently crept up behind her and then struck her over the head with a claw hammer a number of times until she fell to the ground. He said that as he was walking back to his car, he noticed that Bobbi was still alive and that she was trying to lift herself up. Ackland then got into his car and drove back to the bus stop, before dragging Bobbi to the footpath just off the road. Here he strangled her until he thought she was dead, and then put her in the back of his car where he intended to dump her body. He then drove with her to a remote part of Dartmoor about 19 miles away. When he got to Dartmoor and wanted to take Bobbi out of the car, he realized that Bobbi Anne was miraculously still alive and that she was able to sit up. He then took her out of the car and put her arm around his neck, where he proceeded to walk with her into the wooded area. Ackland said that at some point during their walk, Bobbi told him that she was scared, to which he replied that he was too, and that this was the first time he's ever done this before. He then proceeded to repeatedly hit her with a hammer until she fell to the ground, and then he stomped on her neck until she stopped breathing. He then burned her handbag and other belongings which she had on her, before putting her back in the car and driving with her to Bovisand, about 25 miles away. Ackland then stripped her from her clothes and jewelry before dumping her body in an overgrowth area in Bovisand, down a steep bank by the side of a wooded lane.
Bobbi did not stand a chance on being attacked by a man using a claw hammer who was intent on delivering a callous and sustained assault for which he has shown no remorse.
The following day, Cody drove to Tamerton Folliot, just north of Plymouth, where he threw the hammer into the River Tamar and disposed of a carrier bag containing his and Bobbi's blood-stained clothing into nearby allotments in Coombe Lane. He then went for pizza with a friend, attended band rehearsal, and spent most of the night at a local pub drinking the night away. Most of the people who came in contact with Cody during the course of the night recall him being in a happier mood than usual. The next day, he continued with his fun, calling in sick to work, and instead going to his local movie theater where he got himself some popcorn and watched a movie. He also spent a considerable amount of time following the latest news on Bobbi's disappearance. On November 23rd, the day of his confession, Cody Ackland returned to work. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. After leaving for his lunch break, he sent a message to his band's group chat, where he simply told them that he loved them. He then sent a message to his mom where he also told her that he loved her, and then he made his way to the Charles Cross police station where he confessed to the crime. Despite never having been able to recover the murder weapon, police were able to physically link Ackland to the murder thanks to a plethora of evidence. Police found Bobbi's DNA in Ackland's car, as well as on sneakers recovered from his home. His phone records indicated that he was in the vicinity of the bus stop at the time that Bobbi disappeared, and they also found the blood-stained clothes which he tried to dispose of. Despite Cody Ackland willingly providing police with a trove of information regarding the murder, he seemed to be more reluctant with providing a motive. Whenever police tried to probe him for the reason for the attack, Ackland seemed to switch off and didn't want to talk. Police did, however, obtain data from his mobile phone and home computer, and what they found was nothing short of horrific. They found that Cody had a morbid interest in serial killers which bordered on obsession. In the months leading up to the murder, he had searched for information on a number of serial killers, including Ted Bundy, Fred West, and the Golden State Killer. He had also done a number of internet searches for the weapons used during their attacks, as well as for images of the bodies of their victims. Police were able to uncover over 3,000 images, many depicting dead bodies, post-mortems, crime scenes, weapons used, and pictures of the killers themselves. Police were also able to determine that in the days leading up to Bobby's murder, Cody made a number of searches for weapons such as hammers, crowbars, and other cutting tools, as well as stores where he could purchase them. He also searched for a number of remote areas in and around Plymouth. On April 5, 2022, Cody Ackland pleaded guilty to the murder of Bobbi Anne McLeod. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 31 years.